If you're ready to explore the Hebrew roots of your Christian faith, then grab your Bible and let's get started.
Shabbat Shalom. Welcome back to another Sabbath day and joining me in a teaching for the book of Acts. I greatly appreciate every last one of you on today. I'm telling you, I woke up this morning a little struggling, but I am thankful that things worked out for my body on today. Kind of like how to get a little jump start. So I'm thankful for today. Now, we have a lot to cover because we are entering into Acts chapter 15. This here is a pivotal time for the followers of the way, that is those who are Jewish or of Judea or the tribe of Israel, who believes in the Messiah have arrived during this time. So these are the followers of the way, sometimes they call Nazarene. And also for the Gentiles who left their pagan lifestyle and now have grafted in and joined in with the believers and the followers of the way. So this chapter, just like many chapters, many books in the Brit Hadashah, has led to a complete misunderstanding for some that are walking in denominational, non-denominational religious system. This becomes very complicated to understand, because this chapter leads into the Jerusalem Council. So those of you who are not new to the channel know that I completed a whole Jerusalem Council two-part teaching to lay some foundation into the Hebrews faith. So you can take the time to take a look at that at your own time. But this chapter makes a huge difference, just like Acts chapter 2 makes a difference. So many of the denomination and non-denominational religious systems takes Acts chapter 2, Acts chapter 15 as grounds to separate from the very body that they were grafted into. Unless you do your due diligence and study to understand the cultural background, carefully examine the context, use your Bible tools, and connect the scriptures, you will be lost. You'll be lost in walking in the doctrine, the tradition of man, but not walking according to what is written in the word. Welcome to Reconcile the Kingdom. We're working towards growing in harmony, the whole word of truth. Once again, my name is Patrice Robinson, and I appreciate every last one of you who are able to join me live. Now, I want to acknowledge all returning subscribers. I greatly appreciate your support as always, because you're the one who make the comments, you give me a thumbs up, and you share the link as a way of reaching all the nations as much as we can, teaching of the biblical doctrine and not the tradition or dogma of men. I thank you. I appreciate you. New subscribers, welcome to the family. Thank you for your support. Thank you for allowing me to be before you and joining us on this journey. You are also greatly appreciated. And I'm going to encourage you to do the same thing as the returning subscribers. Give me a thumbs up, share the link, make comments. Let's engage with one another. Let's get some understanding of where we're coming from. Any questions, most definitely I encourage that. So don't be shy. Let me know where you're from, what state, what country that you're coming from, and then we can continue with dialogue as we continue in the comment box. All visitors, thank you for joining me on today, but I'm hoping that you're here and that you're ready to join the family that does not mind searching the scriptures. A family that does not mind challenging the religious system teachings that we have been under for thousands of years, and that you open to be a lifetime student of the Bible. There's no need to rush through the Bible. We have to get an understanding. A family that's ready to explore the Hebrews of the Christian faith. This is what you're joining when you hit the subscribe button. And I'm encouraging you to hit the subscribe button. I'm encouraging you to make comments, ask questions, because this is the one thing that people do not do is ask questions. Some people don't ask questions because they think that someone's going to judge them. There's no judgment here because we're all starting from somewhere. So I'm asking you to join this family. And don't forget to hit the bell because the bell lets you know there's announcements or any updates that come from the ministry. And just like we've spoken to the returning subscribers and the new subscribers, comment, share the link and the thumbs up. And I'm asking for you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram, Pinterest, Spotify, and YouTube. So Facebook and Instagram also have their own teachings through what we go through. Like for Acts 15, I think we completed a whole series in Facebook. And then we completed a different series, but Acts 15 in Instagram. So they have the teachings in all the areas, but there's specific questions or comments or things that I'm encouraging you to do. So it's not like everything is all the same. They all have different purposes and different things that's going on. Now, and I'm also encouraging all you to, not on the Sabbath day, because I think the stores close on the Sabbath day. I set it up that way, I believe. So the SE Studio, the RK Biblical Studio, is 50% off everything so that you can get all the workbooks and the worksheets and the scriptural art that you need for your journey or as gifts to others. So make sure you take care of that. Not on the Sabbath day or on the other rest of the days of the week, you're able to do that. And monetary. Yes, you can give monetary through the love drawer that we use for Cash App. I am not a nonprofit organization. I am a LLC because not only do I do ministry of teaching the Bible and things like that, I also do counseling and therapy services for behavioral health. So this is one thing that I wanted everyone to know. So you won't be expecting a letter at the end of the year for what you have given. Now, you can take a look at this in your own timing. It's all in the description box, and all the links that you may need is available for you there. And so I just want to bring it up to your remembrance, like we do each time that we live, that you have an opportunity to ask questions while we're live. You don't have to wait till next week. You don't have to send me no email, anything like that. If questions come up during the teaching, I can address those. So send the questions as we're going through the teaching, and I will address those questions at the end. So what I'm encouraging you to do right now is to have your Bible before you. All the writing utensils that you need. If you purchased the Acts workbook, I appreciate you and thank you, or the worksheet, thank you. But if you don't have the workbook or the worksheet, please have a piece of paper in front of you so that you may take notes and that we can address things that we need to address. So before we get into the overview for Acts 14 from last week, I just want to remind everyone that we are in the 8th biblical month of the biblical year. And we entered in 8th biblical month. For those who follow me on Instagram, we entered in on sunset on October the 5th. So what we have coming up in a few more weeks is the 9th biblical month. So we keep up with this calendar because we're looking forward to the first biblical month that rolls in Passover, that rolls in unleavened bread, first fruit of the barley, then first fruit of the wheat, which is the day of Pentecost, Feast of Weeks. So we're looking for all those coming in, but we always honor the weekly feast, which is every seventh day, which is a Sabbath day. So I just want to give you an update up on the calendar before we go any further. And follow me on Instagram for this information as we continue on with the calendar of Yehovah. So I'm going to bring up my sheet for Acts chapter 15. I'm sorry, Acts chapter 14. But what I don't know, let me bring that back down. Let's see if I have it. What I don't know is does everyone who had the workbook, I didn't mention this last week, but you were supposed to work on your check-in sheet after we completed Acts 14. So those of you that we're doing an overview today, and that might help you to complete your check-in. Remember, there's a check-in throughout the workbooks to make you pause and begin to understand what you're studying and what you're learning from the Messianic community. What do I mean by Messianic community? Those are the believers of the Messiah. Those are the believers, let's say this like it says in Revelation. These are the ones who kept the commandments of the Father and kept the testimony of the Son. So those are the Messianic community that we're reading about in the Brit Hadashah. So this sheet needs to be completed for you to continue on for Acts chapter 15 that we're doing today. So I wanted to make sure that that part of the housekeeping is kept and that you will share your sheet with your loved ones and your friends and as a way of having a study guide as you go through the book. So Acts 14 had a lot going in it. And so it was very difficult for me to pick out specific key points. So I kind of just made it simple. So we had Acts 14 beginning with Barnabas and Paul, the apostles, Barnabas and Paul, or in Iconium in the synagogue of the Jews. That's where they began in Acts 14. Now they ended up in Lystra. Why did they end up? Lystra. Why did they end up there? It's because the synagogues of the Jews in Iconium, many of them, some did receive them, many did not. So they decided to go to the Gentiles, and this is where they ended up. Now, when they arrived there, they did heal. Paul did heal a young man that was crippled since birth. At this time, they began to see Paul and Barnabas as Greek gods because these are the Greeks who are worshiping the Greek gods, Zeus and Hermes. So this is what they were doing. And of course, Paul and Barnabas was, um, tore their clothes and would tell them, no, we are just men. And they began to preach the gospel to them. And many believed. Now, then we have these Jews, religious leaders. Remember, when we're mainly talking about Jews, it's really the religious leaders that from Antioch and Iconium come down to Lystra and cause problems. Because of that, Paul was stoned, and they, of course, thought he was dead. And Paul and Barnabas continue on in the ministry and throughout the areas that they went through. So honestly, Paul and Barnabas traveled through 4 cities in chapter 14: Iconium, Lystra, Derbe, and I think there's another place. But we need to remember that they started in Antioch in 13. So maybe that's what I'm including, Antioch. From Antioch, Cyrus, they moved on and they were very busy in the ministry themselves. And they were preaching the gospel. And at the end of chapter 14, what we see is they are now setting up congregations and elders. This is what they were doing in Acts chapter 14. Now, I want to bring you to my application and insight that we talked about last week. Just like Paul and Barnabas, we are called to stand firm in our faith, even when it leads to hardship. Are you willing to step out boldly and share the good news? I'm encouraging it like I do all the time. This week, find one way to spread the gospel, whether through words, act of service, prayer for someone in need. These are things that we do as a light to other people. This brings me to my question. After being stoned, Paul got up. He continued his mission. Matter of fact, Paul and Barnabas went back to all the cities that they had preached the gospel, although Paul was stoned. When life knocks you down and when you face persecution for your beliefs, how do you respond? Do you persist or do you give up? And we do know Paul and Barnabas pressed on no matter what, especially Paul, because Paul was really receiving a lot of death threats and things like that, due to he had to suffer many things, as Yeshua said to Ananias. So they're my cross-reference, my word study. Now, my recommendation of reading is Proverbs 22. There's a lot that goes on in Proverbs 22. But before we take the sheet down, I want to remind you how Acts chapter 14 ended. Again, they were setting up the congregations in the elders, and they remained for a long period of time teaching and guiding. In today's teaching, we're going to be able to answer how long that Paul and Barnabas was discipling the Gentiles. So let's go straight to Acts chapter 15. Some men came down from Judah and began teaching the brothers, unless you are circumcised according to the custom, some of your Bible says manner, and this means athos, G1485, and that means according to what's prescribed, a ritual that's prescribed according to the custom of Moses, you cannot be saved. And after Paul and Barnabas had a heated argument and debate with them, with who? The ones that came down from Judea. Now, they came from Judea into the Gentiles area, and this is where Paul and Barnabas were debating them. So the brothers determined that Paul and Barnabas and some of the others of them should go up to Jerusalem to the apostles and elders concerning this specific issue. What is the issue again? That unless you are circumcised according to the rituals, according to the custom, the manner prescribed according to Moses, you cannot be saved. Keep that in mind. Therefore, after being sent on their way by the assembly, they was passing through both Phoenicia, Samaria, describing in detail the conversion of the Gentiles, and they were bringing great joy to all the brothers and sisters. When they arrived in Jerusalem, meaning they were stopping by these different areas, they received by the assembly the apostles and the elders, and they reported all the Elohim had done with them. But some of the sect, that means a part of the denomination of the Pharisees who had believed, that means the Pharisees began to believe in the Messiah, the followers of the way, stood up saying, it is necessary to circumcise them and to direct them to keep the law of Moses. There's a lot in this passage. I do not feel the need to rapidly go through this. I do feel the need to slow down because we have to understand what is going on in this passage. Again, we're focused on the men from Judea, the Pharisees, saying that a custom of Moses has to take place for them to receive salvation. The custom of the circumcision. So we have to look at, is there a custom of circumcision? When did this circumcision come about? Why are these men particularly pointing out, why are they suggesting or promoting circumcision only and not the Torah itself? The Torah is not all about circumcision. So we have to figure out what is going on. Why are they pushing this circumcision? Now, the Jerusalem Council was or have to gather together again, for the Gentiles need to be circumcised according to the Pharisees' custom to be saved. Salvation and the circumcision of Moses, according to their thought, these are the two things that they're focused on. Now, I don't want us to forget that Paul, so his Hebrew name, is a former Pharisee, and Barnabas is a Levite. These two are debating with the men who came from Judea about this custom of Moses that they're referring to. And this was caused everything, and they stirred it up. They're now in Jerusalem. They're talking to the apostles. They're talking to the elders concerning this issue. But Paul writes a letter in Galatians about this particular thing. If you go to Galatians chapter 2, verse 1 through 10, he goes into details about the situation. You cannot read Acts 15 without going to Galatians chapter 2, because Paul states some important information in Galatians chapter 2 for you to understand Acts chapter 15. But we're only going to read today verses 1 through 5, and we will leave the other 5 verses for a later time. Galatians chapter 2. Then, after an interval of 14 years, I went up again to Jerusalem with Barnabas, taking Titus along also. It was because of the revelation that I went up. What was the revelation? About the custom that they were trying to uphold the Gentiles to. And I submitted to them the gospel which I preach among the Gentiles. But I did so in private to those who were a reputation, for fear that somehow I might be running or had run in vain, because he's been teaching for 14 years to the Gentiles. Remember, he was there for a long period of time. But not even Titus, who was with me, though he was a Greek, was compelled to be circumcised. That means Titus was not compelled to be circumcised. Yet it was a concern because the false brothers, you hear that? False brothers secretly brought in, who had sneaked in to spy on our freedom, which we have in Messiah Yeshua, in order to enslave us. So what's the false brothers teaching? The customs of Moses, that they consider a custom of Moses. But we did not yield in subjection to them, even for an hour, so that the truth of the gospel would remain with you. What truth of the gospel? You see how many questions should be going through your head as you're studying? Again, when did circumcision come about? Why are these men pointing out, suggesting, or promoting circumcision only and not the Torah itself? What is really going on here? So I went through the Bible and found several scriptures in the Tanakh, that is the Torah, about circumcision, of what Moses spoke about, or what Yehovah spoke to Moses about. So in Exodus chapter 12, verse 44, but for every slave that someone has purchased with money, after you have circumcised him, then he may eat it. This is the Passover meal that they're referring to. Now, these are people who are purchased by money. They come into your home. They are circumcised. But there's no specific ritual, just circumcision, right? Let's go down to verse 48. But if a stranger resides with you and celebrate the Passover to Yehovah, All of his males are to be circumcised. Then he should come near to celebrate it, and he shall be like a native of the land. But no uncircumcised male may eat of it. Again, what we're reading is that a stranger who wants to join in and celebrate Passover, celebrate your feast, celebrate, be among you, he is to be circumcised, and he will become like a native in the land. But still, we don't have a ritual. We just have circumcision. Leviticus chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Then Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, saying, When a woman gives birth, delivers a male child, then she should be unclean for 7 days. And as she is the days of her menstruation, she shall be unclean. Then on the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin should be circumcised. Again, we're reading about the circumcision that happens on the 8th day of a child's birth. No ritual, but instructions given from Yehovah to Moses to circumcise a male that is born on the 8th day. This circumcision is put in place for the nation to continue. What do I mean by continue? Because circumcision came prior to the nations, just like many things came prior to the nation. Circumcision actually started way in Genesis chapter 17 with Abraham. So far, no circumcision ritual or step-by-step instructions for you to follow for the circumcision has been given. But let's read and see what Yehovah spoke to Abraham. He says, verse 9, Elohim said farther to Abraham, Now as for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you throughout this generation. This is my covenant. You shall keep between me and you and your descendants after you. Every male among you should be circumcised, and you should be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskin. It should be a sign of covenant between me and you. And every male among you who is 8 days old should be circumcised throughout your generations, including a slave who was born in the house, who was brought with money from any foreigner who is not of your descendants. A slave who was born in your house or who was brought with money shall certainly be circumcised. So my covenant shall be in your flesh as an everlasting covenant. But as for an uncircumcised male, one who's not circumcised in flesh for his foreskin, that person should be cut off from his people and has been broken. He has broken my covenant. So what we're finding is circumcision brought in from Yehovah to Abraham for the people that's in his household to be circumcised, to be in covenant with him. Now, how old was Abraham when this circumcision came about? So you go further down in 23, verse 23. Then Abraham took his son Ishmael. Ishmael was already born. And all the slaves who was born in his house and all who brought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's household are circumcised in the flesh of the foreskin on this very same day, as Elohim has said to him. Now Abraham was 99 years old, and when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, his son Ishmael was 13 years old. When he was circumcised in the flesh of foreskin, on this very same day, Abraham was circumcised as well as his son Ishmael. All the men of the household, those who were born in this house or brought with money from a foreigner, were circumcised with him. So what we're reading is that Abraham, Ishmael, all the male slaves who were brought with money, all those who were born in this household came into covenant with Yehovah through circumcision. So far, only really Isaac that we know who was circumcised on the 8th day. You find that in Genesis chapter 21, verse 4. Then Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as Elohim had commanded him. Again, the purpose is trying to find out, trying to determine if there's a custom of Moses. No, there is not a custom of Moses because it came from Abraham. It's a covenant. Outside the instructions of actually being circumcised, there is no custom, no ritual written down that the Pharisees and the men from Judah is trying to uphold here. We have to keep in mind that Yeshua has never been happy about the customs that the Pharisees upheld. Remember back in Matthew 23:15, those of you who follow me and went through the whole series, four seasons of what Yeshua had taught, understands this themselves. Matthew 23:15 says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you travel around on sea and on land to make one proselyte." Now, proselyte, you need to pause there. There is a specific order and instructions that the Pharisees require for the proselyte to do. Yes, circumcision was one, but there's other things that they had to do in order to become a proselyte that are not written in the word. And this is why Yeshua goes on to say, when he becomes one of you, you make him twice as much as the son of hell as yourselves. Why did he say that? Because the Pharisees, the sects, put on rules and regulations on those who are trying to come into the follow and come into covenant that are not written. This is what we call the oral Torah. This is some things that we find in the Mishnah, the Talmud, and other writings and commentaries that they were following prior to the Torah. The Torah is last. All their instructions, their commentary, again, the Talmud, Mishnah, the other writings, I think it's the Grimoire, all these things are put before the Torah. And this is the issue that Yeshua had with them. And this is the issue that is going on now. They want everyone to become the proselytes according to their customs, their rituals that they say that are custom of Moses. It's not. These are the oral laws that they continue to try to have the people of the Gentiles who join in. So they're no longer Gentiles, they become followers of the way. This is important for us to understand because as we continue, you're going to find out more deeper understanding of what is going on in chapter 15. I need you to have some foundation of what is the Pharisees of the sect, the men of Judea is trying to point out that the translator of Acts don't show you. You will not know this information again until you bring the scriptures together. Many people in the denomination and non-denominational religious system are taught from the book of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all the way through, is that the Pharisees and all the sects, the Sadducees, and all of the other people, denominations of that time, were following the instructions of Moses. Sadly, that is not true. This is what Yeshua had against them. They were following religion. They were following the oral Torah. They were following all their commentaries and all their writings that began to develop when they were in Babylon. And it carried on. Unless you know this, you would think that they were enduringly following the law of Moses. And you would not understand why Paul, who was a former Pharisee, or Barnabas, the Levite, is debating this. You would think they're debating against the law, the instructions of Moses, the instructions of Yehovah given to Moses, but they're not. So I'm encouraging you to hit the subscribe button and continue on the journey with us as we continue through the studies, because I am encouraging you to dig deeper and take off the lenses of your denomination, the non-denominational religious system, and ask questions when you're studying. Because I would have thought to ask, what are they talking about when it comes to the law of Moses, the custom? I would have never thought about that when I was under denomination, non-denominational religious. I just read it and moved on. And this is where people get lost at. So we do understand that we are trying to, that the Pharisees and the men of Judea are trying to lead the new believers, followers of the way, the Gentiles that come in, to come into their rituals as a proselyte. You do not become a proselyte and go through all those rituals set by their denominations in order to walk with the Messiah. See, you and I, who were maybe not brought up in the Torah being our foundation, we do not immediately start with walking with everything in the Torah because we don't understand it. This is why Paul and Barnabas spent about 14 years with the Gentiles that became followers of the way, who've been grafted in, to teach them this foundation that many people are missing. You're like, whoa, it takes time to understand the scriptures as it's written. Now, remember, there was no New Testament. There was no Brit Hadashah. There was no Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. There was no letters at this time. They are teaching them the Tanakh. They're teaching them the Old Testament. This is the foundation that we have to have. Now, the Torah all at once is going to be heavy to carry because you don't understand it. So you're going to learn as you go, just like they did in the wilderness. That's Abraham began to learn the instructions that was given to him. And as the Gentiles who became followers of the way join in. But wait, we'll get to that as we continue chapter 15 on next week, because there's so much more to cover. Now, so far, we have not read about any customs that are outlined by Moses in the Tanakh. We do know there's circumcision, but there's no custom outlined to become a proselyte according to Moses. Most of all, what we are witnessing with the Gentiles, previously Gentiles, is a circumcision of the heart, which is the first thing that happened when they begin to believe, because they don't have the Torah. Even in the wilderness, they had the Torah, but their heart was still hardened. Matter of fact, it was Moses that says, circumcise your heart. That began in the Tanakh. That did not begin in the Brit Hadashah. So I'm encouraging you to dig deeper and formally study what we just covered on today. And that is Acts chapter 15. We only went through the first 5 verses. I'm encouraging you to study those and go deeper. There's so much that we have to understand. I don't see any questions or any comments that I need to address on today. Join me on Tuesday. I'll read in Exodus chapter 34. And next Sabbath day, we will continue with Acts 15 because there is a lot that we're going to grasp and put together as we go on this journey. May Yehovah bless you and keep you. May Yehovah shine his face on you and give you his favor. May Yehovah shine his face towards you and give you his peace. All in the mighty name of Yeshua. I pray that you have a blessed rest of the week, and I will see you on Tuesday at 7 o'clock p.m. I really appreciate it.